FLM, wide open thinking, world-class work, and far-reaching results. Now with locations in Minneapolis, Columbus, Indianapolis, and Washington, D.C. A strategic marketing and communications company dedicated to serving clients who specialize in the business of agriculture and the life of rural communities.
Congressman David Scott from Georgia's 13th District, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Good to be with you, Spencer.
Well, for starters, can you tell us a little bit about your district and why agriculture is important to it?
Well, first of all, agriculture is the most important industry in the world. It's the food we eat, it's the clothes we wear, it's the structures for our buildings, and more growing as our energy source, and a major player in world finance and trading. So it's very, very critical. It is the #1 industry in my state of Georgia. And so it gives me a great pleasure to be able to serve on the Agriculture Committee and really be able to not just look out for Georgia, but look out for our status in the world. When you're talking about food, it's very important that our agricultural community and our industry remains #1, and to make sure that food production is maintained in this country. And so we have a lot of forces. Our farmers are being faced with more and more pressures from all around. I am particularly concerned about what's happening with cotton. As you probably know, Georgia is the #2 state in cotton production. Only Texas is ahead of Georgia, important part of our economy. And the WTO has put cotton in a very perilous place. It has forced them to be removed from our regular crop insurance into stacks, which in and of itself now is having problems. And then we're faced with the challenge of making sure we can get the Agriculture Secretary to make cottonseed oil the regular definition so that we will be able to gain some financial help for the cotton industry. Not only that, but when you see China unloading bales and bales and tons of cotton, and you know, when you say tons of cotton, that's got to be a lot of cotton, because cotton is like that. And I remember growing up on a farm, going and picking cotton. We had a choice of going and picking cotton or cropping tobacco. I always said, let me go with the tobacco, because it seemed like forever to get a pound of cotton in that bag. And then my fingers get bloody on the sticks that's there. But we have a number of challenges. I find that another challenge that I'm working with is to utilize our institutions, our educational institutions. There's a unique feature in our Farm Bill in which the reason why the South was able to more quickly, it was difficult after the Civil War, to again attain a proper position and a survival position in the economy is because we had the land, we had the farm, we had the agriculture. But then we did something else. We established the traditional land grant colleges throughout the South. And that played a very important role in our recovery, because we were training, we were researching, we were able to get funding. And then a few years later, we added the 1890s, the African American land grant colleges to that formula. And so I'm taking a very involved look at this to see how we can utilize our land grant colleges to meet a number of very pressing challenges to overall agriculture. Right now, as I see it, there are many issues facing agriculture, but the #1 issue is the continuing rise level of the average age of our farmers. And right now it's like 60%, 59.8%, and it's continuing to go up. And if we don't do something very quickly and be more aggressive and getting help to beginning farmers, getting our next generation and our generations to come to go into agriculture. Like I said, it's the most important industry we got. Where would you be without food? And we have to understand that. And I view that as a national security issue. Because if we don't do something to begin to turn that age and to begin to bring the age of farmers down, then we become subservient to other nations bringing our food in. We don't want that. And so what I've done here is to take a look at our Farm Bill and to take a look at those land grant colleges that are African American particularly, because we've got to get all of our people re-engaged in agriculture. There is a program, for example, that I'm working closely with that I think is wonderful, called Ag-Aware. It's by the Farm Credit folks, and down in Georgia we call them Ag South. They're hitting the nail on the head here, and they're addressing this with our 1860s. Then we have the framework already there. So one of my pressing things that I'm trying to do is to go in with the next Farm Bill, and I ask for everybody's help here because it's not going to be easy. But it's particularly, you have 19 African American institutions that are land grant colleges already laid out there. And there are only 3 areas where they can use the money that we put into the Farm Bill. Research, teaching, and extension. I want to add another category to that, and I think we got some support on a bipartisan way. And that would be that additional area of expenditure would be for scholarships for students and loan forgiveness. Now, why do we do that? When I came up here I came up 13 years ago, but I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago, when we recognized that we had a shortage of veterinarians, I put the language in that we would take the student loan forgiveness and we would add scholarships to those doctors who would study veterinarian medicine. And obviously, if they do that, they're automatically coming into agriculture for our animals. Where there's a shortage, we did it. I did the same thing for lawyers. When we had an overbalance of lawyers going into the private sector making the big bucks, well, we needed an incentive in here to get, so we could truly have a justice system that was fair. So if you go into a public defender, district attorney, or whatever, for 4, 5, 6 years, we pay your education as well. And some of them stay and they like it and it's there, so we have a balance there. So if we can do that for those kinds of things, then came the VA bill, and we're a shortage of psychiatrists. We added language that those folks that would come out we would pay, give their medical school loan forgiveness. So if we can do it for the lawyers, if we can do it for the veterinarians, right? Why can't we do that to get young African American students re-engaged? When I gave the commencement speech at the University of Georgia about 2 years ago, there were 560 graduates, and not a single one of those was an African American. Degree after degree, when there are all kinds of opportunities open, but their degrees are in business agriculture, or agricultural business. So that's one little area, and I think I'm uniquely prepared to do that. I was born on a farm. I grew up on a farm. I think the Lord has sort of placed me in situations as a way of preparing you for where you are now. And I can relate to so much. On that point, the other area, coming back to what we want to do here in my position on that committee, not just with bringing down the age of beginning farmers or trying to engage this to other areas and address and bring that age down to beginning farmers. But the farmer is faced with such an array of challenges. And on top of that, over-regulation and a lack of response from us here in the federal government. The water rule, WATUS, is a cruel violation of the farmer's rights. Right now, the farmer regulation, where the federal government will come on a farmer's private property if he's got a pond or a puddle or a stream, man-made, ditches, whatever they may be on there, and make him have a permit for it. And the length of time he doesn't get the permit, they fine him. What in the world is that about? There's nothing navigable about a pond of water or a well that's there. And furthermore, I know why they're there. My grandfather, I grew up on the farm with him, and it's a tobacco farm, and we had ditches, and we made those ditches. If you go on any farm, you'll find ditches, you'll find waterways, you'll find pools, wells, you'll find areas of containment where when it rains, and particularly when you have hurricanes. And one of the things is that over in South Carolina, where my farm is, and much of the South is in the hurricane path. Well, that's an ample opportunity to fill up those wells, to be there. Why? Because there's going to come a time when you have the droughts. And those plants still need watering. Your animals, your mules, your cows, your livestock, they still got to drink water from someplace. So it's like an insurance valve of having these things on there. Or like I said in committee on yesterday, when you're planting tobacco, especially, go down, you got the tobacco bed, you go get the plant, you go in the field, but you got somebody there carrying water. Because when you you have what they call a tobacco planter, you get it there, and it's a system. Somebody's there with the tobacco plant. You got to put it into the planter, and then when you put it into the planter, somebody's right there where you're pouring the water in. Because tobacco takes that, and then it plants it deep. When you pull the spring, it goes deep into the ground, so it's rooted there. But it also has to have immediate water to pull the soil tight around the bottom of the plant.
I want to shift gears a little bit here and talk to you about something more broadly facing African Americans and facing Congress. Now, you are one of 46 African American members of the House, and speaking of there's 435 members. That's roughly 10%. Census data puts the population at about 13% that identifies African American. So, do you think there's an adequate level of African American representation in the U.S. House and in Congress more broadly as a whole?
Well, the way I got to answer that is that we live in a democracy, first of all, and representation in Congress is determined not by some calculus figure, but by the choice and the will of the people. So I would rather want to make sure that there are no artificial barriers like photo ID that's used to stop or to hurt that turnout, gerrymandering, and all of the things that are there. What I would be concerned about in that regard is making sure we can get the voting rights Section 4 back in there and Section 5, which requires pre-clearance. The decisions are made by the voters at the local level. And it's important that when they do their redistrictings and they do their plans, that the Justice Department has an opportunity to review that. That's my worry, because that has been taken out. and we're going to have to find an area, a mechanism to replace that. So quantitatively on what would be a good number, I think we got 46 African American members that are African American members of Congress. I can't say we need 20% or we need whatever that percentage is. I just think that as long as you're fair and square, and you give everybody a chance, and you don't have any artificial barriers that prohibit or diminish voter turnout and these sorts of things, that's what we got to put our mind on. And the reason I say that is that I didn't get to Congress. I was the first African American to get elected to Congress in a district that was less than 40% African American in the South. And I ran my reelection. I had to run my reelection in 2002. That was the same year that we in the Georgia legislature, under a very brave and courageous Governor Roy Barnes, changed the flag from the Confederate battle flag because it was offensive. Well, to run that year in 13 counties in Atlanta and Georgia, when my district was just 37.6% African American voting age. And as a demonstration of the angst and the disagreement with what the legislature did, I had to run in a district where all those Confederate flags were out on the porches and everywhere else. So people wanted to say, hey, this. The reason I tell you this story is that in that year, Governor Barnes went down. Max Cleland went down, the senator. Right? Speaker Tom Murphy went down. That vote changed the whole pivot, and Sonny Perdue was elected governor, the first Republican governor since Reconstruction. But at the end of the day, David Scott won that election. And I had, in some of those yards where that Confederate flag was waving, I never will forget. I went to this guy's door, I didn't know what was going to happen. Confederate flag out there, I had to suck it up and go on those porches, knock on the door. Guy opens the door. What can I do for you? I said, I'm David Scott, I'm running for Congress, and I just want to talk to you a minute. And go. Make a long story short, we talked, we expressed. And when I left, I said, put the sign out. I looked where the Confederate flag was, and I put my David Scott blue and white for Congress yard sign right under the Confederate battle flag, okay? And I left. And I said, oh man, because it was a great moment in my life, really, when I experienced it. And I said, oh my God, wasn't that wonderful? I get in my car, and I'm looking in my rearview mirror, because I'm thinking, I hope he's not going to take the sign. He didn't do that just to make me feel good, to get me out of the way. So I'm riding, I'm looking in the rearview mirror, and then I see the guy moving towards my sign. I said, oh Lord, he's going to take the sign. And I'm looking in the rearview mirror, and then he takes a cloth out of his pocket, and he wiping my sign. Wiping the dew. In Georgia, we have dew in the mornings, and the sign had some wetness on it. And he's wiping that off. That's a great moment for me. And it's a very poignant story to give an answer to your question. And I knew right then that I didn't come to Congress just to represent black people. I came to Congress to represent white people as well. That tells you the story.
Now you've been in Congress for more than a lot of time of your fellow members. You're one of the more senior members on the House Agriculture Committee, just as a frame of reference. Mm-hmm. So you've got this time that you've spent on Capitol Hill. What are you planning to do to make sure that as you continue to desire to serve, that you still have the support of your constituents? So I guess long question made short. You've been here for a while. How do you plan to work to make sure that you can stay here?
To keep continually doing what I'm doing. from day one, representing everybody, being there for people, and concentrating on areas where everybody needs the greatest help. And that is in terms of economic health. I'm a graduate of Wharton School of Finance, where I got my MBA in a very, very critical time. And that's what I basically did my thesis on. Wealth building, helping people cater to a better economic life. And when you center on that, that means jobs. That means helping keeping our economy moving. That means making sure we maintain the strongest economy in the world. I am also the ranking member on our derivatives, swaps, and exchanges, commodity exchanges committee. Critical to risk management, particularly for our farmers and for our manufacturers. I'm in the wheelhouse of making sure for all the sectors and people that our economic health maintains a very strong vision. You can't do that without being in good health. You can't do that without making sure that your constituents have access to jobs, to good health care. So every year I've been up here, I put a jobs fair. We've gotten thousands and thousands of jobs every year. This year coming up April the 1st, we're gonna have a jobs. Last year we had 20,000 people come, and we got over 5,000 jobs. Secondly, our veterans. I am one of the strongest fighters up here for our veterans. They paid the price, they were there, they're not getting their help. I was the first member of Congress to cry out for the resignation of President Obama's veteran secretary, Secretary Shinseki, because of what was happening with the suicides. You know the story with our veterans. I was the first one to make sure when I went to the President of the United States, when he got concerned with me about that. I said, President Obama, I said, it's wonderful. I said, but you're the commander-in-chief here. You send these soldiers into bullets, into harm. They don't hesitate. And we have 22 soldiers committing suicide, veterans, and 4 of them down in my district, and we sent all that material to you and was nothing. I got a right. And I said, Mr. President, one other thing. You have yet to be seen going into a veterans hospital. And then following that, about a couple of weeks later, he was seen going into the hospital in Phoenix. And when I saw him at picture taking, it might have been the Christmas holiday or something where we take pictures, and he said to me, oh, David, by the way, thank you for pulling my leg about going into the VA hospital. So I think that I have positioned myself. We give a health fair every year, all right? Where we bring the entire healthcare community, Emory University Hospital, Grady Hospital, Piedmont Hospital, Northside, all those hospitals together, physicians with dentists, and we bring it into the community, because what better way to deal with the high cost of healthcare than to bring in there every year health care for my constituents, where they can come and get that. We live in the stroke belt in the South there. So they know they don't even have to have health insurance. They know every year at that same time at Mondays Mill High School in Clayton County that they can come and get exams for breast cancer. And women do. We're there from sun up to sundown, examining 300-400 women every year, helping them, and we save lives with the breast cancer exams. We have lines of African American men where prostate cancer is so terrible. They come in and get their prostate exam, and they save lives. We have insurance companies there that will get good plans. You have the Affordable Care Act there, where you can get treatment for this with no pre-existing conditions. So my point is that I don't just represent my constituency up here. I'm down there bringing stuff, using my position as a member of Congress developing relationships wherever I go, in the business community, in the political community, to bring services to my constituents that want to get scholarships. We give art scholarships. And we work hard. We just got through giving our appointments to the military academies. What a proud day that was, to give appointments to West Point, to the Merchant Marines, to the Naval Academy, the Air Force Academy, and these proud youngsters doing that. And then once you get the reputation of that, and people know what your issues are, they know that if there's a veteran anywhere in this country or the world that's got a problem, they can call David Scott. Doesn't matter about my district. That's the other thing. I have learned to represent not a district up here, but I represent Georgia. When they say, I'm a Georgia congressman. And the reason is that when I first came up here, my district changed 3 times. And right now, I've represented 13 counties in Georgia because of the reconfiguration of the district. And when you look at Georgia as a whole, and the uniqueness of my serving on the Agriculture Committee, the uniqueness of the impact of agriculture in Georgia, not just in the area of the farming, but let's look at an area of high financing. We now have ICE, the Intercontinental Exchange. Who would have thought that the New York Stock Exchange would be coming under our committee, or now we've been purchased by a Georgia company? You look at poultry, blueberries, you look at all of this. And so this gives me a tremendous platform from which to work, to look out for the interests of Georgia in its totality. And all I've got to do, and I always charge my staff with this, never forget how you got to where you are and the people that helped you get there. I represent people in the African American community as well and the same as I treat that gentleman where I put my yard sign with the Confederate battle flag. And as long as people know that David Scott is up there for everybody, that's how we stay up here. And that's how we grow.
Congressman David Scott from Georgia's 13th District, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you.